Shayna Steele, how are you doing?
I'm good.
That's good.
It's late for this mama.
How's your family?
Good. They're doing good. We're just finishing up homeschool, and that'll be done this week. I have a 7-year-old, and I just been working on music, being creative, and I'm also taking classes right now. So just organizing, decluttering. We're gonna go on a road trip next week, though, and go visit my in-laws. So we are getting ready for that, getting some COVID testing done before we do that. Trying to take all the right measures to make sure that we're staying safe and not exposing anybody. But we've been pretty legit with our lockdown here at home. So
All right.
yeah,
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. That you're doing well. That your family's doing well.
hmm
We were talking before we started rolling about how kind of crazy everything just all of a sudden
hmm
just got with first the quarantine and then now we have a lot of protests around the
hmm
country
hmm
and yeah, it's a different kind of time.
yeah,
And you also mentioned that you're working on music. So
yeah.
so I'm curious, what are you working on?
Um, I mean, I usually when I'm writing new music, I never like to say I'm writing music to make an album. I've never been that kind of writer. I just kind of like, oh, we're writing these songs, let's write this music and then let's start doing them live. And then all of a sudden I've got this kind of compilation of songs over a period of time. It's like, wow, we have like 20 new songs, we should make a record. And that's usually how it goes. But now that everything is being created in my space and we don't have this opportunity to then go out and perform in front of an audience and kind of fix things as we go along, see, just see how it works in a live setting or audience reaction or just the way that the band plays it. Uh, the sound of my music has kind of changed a little bit. It's still very soulful. I feel like it's still very me, but obviously we don't have a live room in my house. I mean, we have a studio here, and I, I the last album that I did, I was able to do a majority of the recording down here. But uh, yeah, at this point, I have 50 ideas for songs and probably 3 or 4 songs that are actually finished, completed. So that's where I'm at right now.
So let me ask you about this. So
Mhm,
uh, I have an experience with my composing, not the commissioned stuff that I do, because that's usually very specific
mhm,
and it's kind of it's much easier for me to stay on schedule and to stay on task with that kind of writing.
mhm.
Besides the fact that there's like a deadline,
Right.
and all of that. But with my original compositions, uh, I get writer's block if I haven't recorded, if I have too much material that hasn't been recorded.
Right.
Um, I don't know if you experienced that at all.
I get writer's block all the time. Unfortunately, my writer's blocks will last for several years. um, and I, I, I have to be like really focused. Sorry. I have to be really focused about what it is that I'm writing, but just like the goal in mind. And I also have to have an end date in order for me to finish a project. I'm really good with beginnings and endings of stuff and deadlines. If I'm given this open space to write something, then I'll say, oh, well, then I have all the time in the world. I'll get back to the song when I get back to it. And then I end up having 50 like half songs or like, 100 two-liner songs of really great ideas. But I eventually do go back to them because I record everything. I record every thought. I record every idea, every melody, every bass line in my head. I put it down on tape, and I make a record of it just because I have gone back to something that I wrote 2 years ago, and it ends up being like the song on the next record. So
Yeah, I've heard who is it? I think it's Steve Toure, the trombone player,
okay.
and he talks about spending some time writing every day,
Yeah.
um, and he saves everything, and so that eventually what tends to happen is something that he recorded a long time ago, or rather that he wrote a long time ago. It's just the the 12 bars that was needed to make this one song a complete
Yeah.
song. And when you're record, you say you record everything. Are you
Mhm.
doing that on your phone, or do you have like a dedicated device?
Both. I record the ideas on my phone, but when I come up with something that's like that I'm committed to, that I know I'm going to send to someone that I'm collaborating with, or to David, who is obviously he's my husband, but also, we're musical partners. When I want to send something to him, I'm recording upstairs. I have Pro Tools up in my studio, so
Mm.
I'm recording upstairs, and then I'll send everything down to him, and then we'll schedule a time for me to come down to the studio in the basement, and then we kind of create something, and then he'll make a track and send it back to me, and then I'll record that way. When we're trying to like actually finish the song, I'll I'll go through Pro Tools to do that, just so we have a good demo of it.
I my wife is a dancer,
Okay.
and she has her own dance company,
Hmm.
and I'm her musical director, which means that I do a lot of editing songs, and then I've written some original stuff and combined things in different ways.
Hmm.
Um, there was a little bit of a language barrier communicating because dancers want to count in eights, and you're
Right.
trying to explain, well, are we in 4/4, or okay, so if we're not in an even time signature, how are you going to count?
Yeah.
You know, uh, but we have somewhat of a similar kind of process where she
Mhm.
kind of thinks of what she wants to do, and then she sends me something. Hey, I want it to be kind of like this, and then I'll get in the studio and do something. Then I send it back to her, and she's like, "Hey, but can you add 8 counts of, or what is it? 6 counts of eight? Again, with the
Right.
eights.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so, but it's a great thing to be able to work with your spouse that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel incredibly blessed that I learned how to be a band leader from Dave. That's funny that you bring that up about the counting, because when I first started doing jazz, and I would count things off as 5, 6, 7, 8, coming from Broadway, because everything is based around choreography in musical theater, and it would be like 5, 6, 7, 8, and David's like, no, you can't do that, jazz. You got to start at one. So um, it's been a great learning experience to work with David. He's so well versed in music and music theory, and I'm grateful for that. I feel like I married well. I'm marrying a piano player and a musical director. It definitely benefits me more than I benefit him.
Now, you said that you have a 7-year-old,
Yeah.
and I have a 6-year-old.
Oh, fun.
Yes, so
It's a good age.
I yes, I have an idea of you're talking about uh, being a mother.
Hmm.
You know, uh, of course, I don't know anything about being a mother, but
Hmm.
I know about having a 6-year-old though. So,
Hmm.
and I think all of us, at least over the last several weeks since this quarantine went in place. I mean, my son's been out of school for a couple weeks now, but
Okay.
all of us have been homeschooling, right? And and that was a different kind of experience. Um, I don't know if I have enough patience. Well, actually, it's not even about patience. It's this is kindergarten, and how come I can't understand what it is that I'm supposed to be doing here?
I know when you have to read those directions, like you're like, wait a minute, what does she say to do? And then you have your child. It's like, Mom, she said da 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 da. Like, oh, I didn't get it. I didn't understand. That's
Yeah,
pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
yeah. My wife is much better at understanding those instructions than I am. I think I'm trying to make it too deep or something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
I just don't understand it half the time. Um,
understandable.
um, so so can so tell us about you. Tell us about how you grew up and your experience with music. You know, when you started, when you knew that this is what you wanted to do, who you listened to, maybe some of the music that was happening around the house.
So I grew up in a military family, and my dad served in the Air Force for 26 years, and I, as far as like watching live music, I mean, I was around it so much. My dad was a singer and a musician, and he participated in like the world, showcases like through the United States Air Force and Tops and Blue. Like those are like the big live shows within the branch, and so I went to all of those shows, all those live shows, and watched my dad in his groups, and they were very similar to like the Temptations or the Four Tops. He was in a group called um, the Soul Advisors and Chill Factor, Wisteria. Like they had all these great names, but I grew up watching my dad doing all these slick moves and the harmonies, um, and I knew I wanted to do that. So um, obviously there was a lot of Motown and soul music playing in my house. Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, Isaac Hayes, the Supremes. Like it was a lot of that. And I grew up in an interracial family. My sisters are white, my brothers are black. My mother's white, my father's black. So there was just so much going on in my house musically. I mean, my sisters were really into hair rock. So I was listening to a lot of what they were into, like Bon Jovi and Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses. Like that was also like huge for me. And then like CNC Music Factory, like that whole '90s kind of R&B hip hop thing going on, De La Soul, whatever. Like it was just kind of just um, this mix, this mishmash of crazy music going on in my household. But I knew I did a lot of musical theater growing up as well, and was really into that. I was into cast albums like Jesus Christ Superstar and Dreamgirls, Annie, Chorus Line. Like that was my dream, to be on Broadway. And so I kind of had that musical background. Moving to New York, I moved to New York really young. I ended up dropping out of college to move to New York, because I was ready. I was ready to do it. So pretty soon after I moved to New York, I booked my first Broadway show, which was Rent, and Rent was huge at the time. They had just opened on Broadway, um, and it was like getting in Hamilton. Rent was Hamilton of the time, and I ended up doing a couple more Broadway shows after that. Hairspray being my last, and then went on to, I started writing around that time, like seriously writing and putting a band together with Dave. It was around 2002, um, and decided that Broadway was not the path that I wanted to continue on anymore, and then went back to where it all started with soul music, because that's what I grew up listening to, and that's where my heart was. My foundation, soul music. Um, and yeah, so I started making records, but during that time I also had to hustle, the musicians hustle, which was, I needed to get a gig that was actually going to pay my bills. So I started background singing for artists, Bette Midler being the first artist I ever worked with, and went on to sing with Rihanna and Kelly Clarkson and several other artists, like in one-off positions, vocal contracting for TV and film. Um, and then I finally made the transition to just being a solo artist, guest artist, like singing with, Columbus Jazz Orchestra and with symphonies all over the country, big bands all over the world. And that's kind of where I was at until COVID happened. I was actually in the middle of a tour in Switzerland, in a residency in Switzerland, when they said they're shutting the country down, and that was the last gig that I did. So I had just come off stage, and 4 hours later, they're like, they're gonna shut the borders. I woke the band up, and we're like, we gotta go. It's time to get out of here. So
Wow.
that's kind of my life in 3 minutes. And here I am. So.
Speaking of Columbus Jazz Orchestra, and that's the first time that I had heard you sing.
I was very sick on those shows. Oh God.
Well, if every singer could be as sick as you were, you're one of the best singers I've ever heard.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
You're terrific. You're so pitch and you can do everything. You can sing subtle. You can sing gut singing. Range is crazy. Pitch, tone, all of that. I mean, you have all of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to interview you, and actually I'm an introvert. I'm pretty shy.
Yeah.
I would have talked to you more just to get to know you and ask you some questions and things like that. But I'm pretty. And also, like I said, I have a 6-year-old, and my agenda was always play the gig and then get home as soon as possible, because my son is going to be upset if he finds out that I didn't come right home. Yeah. He went to sleep before I got home.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about your process of your practicing. What is your approach like? If you are you more sort of project oriented with your practicing? Okay, I have these gigs coming up. I've got this music I have to get together. I mean, all of us have to do some of that. Do you have like a particular routine that you tend to stick to? And what does that look like?
When I'm during my regular gig schedule, like pre-COVID, which I imagine we'll go back to that. I mean, I was regularly performing, 2 or 3 concerts a week. I was leaving town every weekend, whether it was with a symphony or I was flying overseas to do a one-off or I was touring. So the fact that I am usually singing every week, then I'm pretty much singing every single day, doing vocal warm-ups or whatever. But when I'm doing concerts a lot, I don't have to do a lot of upkeep because my voice just kind of is there. The muscle is strong, muscle memory is there. What I probably should do when I know I have concerts coming up, which will happen eventually, where it's like, great, they have a vaccine, all the venues are opening, I have a gig in 3 weeks. I need to, at least a week or 2 before that, need to start singing every day, and not just like a little, piddly 15-minute warm up, but like a full on going in a room and like singing through my material full out, so that the first time is not me walking into a sound check where I'm singing out loud. When I'm singing, I'm incredibly disciplined when it comes to sleep and hydration. I don't drink alcohol. I mean, I will, like, on occasion have a glass of wine or something. It is, but it's just not. I just can't drink at all. As a matter of fact, I I can't remember the last time I had anything to drink. It's just something that I can't do as a vocalist. It
Mm.
dries you out. It really affects my voice to drink alcohol. So I don't do that. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I am so disciplined with that. I also I exercise every day, especially when I'm doing shows. I have to work out a day of show, or it is not going to be right. I can't eat before a show. If I do, it's going to be like just the smallest little thing because my body just absorbs it all. I don't know what it is about a performance, but my body just becomes like my entire body is my voice, and I use my body when I'm singing. As you probably noticed in the show, I'm
Yeah, I
extremely
definitely
energetic.
noticed that.
I'm energetic. I'm active. At the end of a show, I'm sweating more than I ever did running a marathon because I put my entire, like every fiber of my being into my performance. As one of my agents said, it's like watching an Olympic event. And because at the Olympics, everyone's there to do their best to win the gold. And I treat every performance as this has to be the greatest performance of my life because I'm here to make somebody happy. So therefore, I don't want to, I don't want to give an audience member only half of me. They paid the full price, so they should get the full performance from me. So I'm incredibly disciplined when it comes to taking care of myself.
Okay, so you said the thing about working out,
Hmm.
and I'm, so the quarantine thing, it knocked a dent in my fitness goals.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm a, I'm a, uh, I'm a bodybuilder,
Okay.
and I don't have the stuff in my house to be able to do what I can do at the gym.
Right. Right.
And And even if I did have some of this stuff, there's just a lot of equipment that it's highly specialized and it's
Right.
too expensive to try to, and I don't have anywhere to put it. Um,
Right.
and so that was a hard thing to to deal with. For about the first month, it was good because I'm not getting any younger, and my joints and tendons and stuff, my body could take a break from the constant working out.
Hmm. Hmm.
But after that, it was like, come on, man. Uh, like, I mean, because
Yeah.
I use it as I have specific goals. I have a bench press goal, for instance,
Okay.
and I've been working on that for a while, and so that's part of the reason I do it. But it's also a tremendous stress reliever, um, and and then there's like the whole kind of I've got gym buddies, and there's like
Hmm.
folks that I see
Right.
regularly, and there's the actual space that I'm in, and okay, I usually work out on the third bench down. it's
Hmm.
it's just like all of that kind of stuff that was the two things I think I missed the most being under quarantine were playing on stage in front of an audience,
Hmm.
um, and the second thing was the gym.
Yeah.
Now, I'm in Ohio, so we actually opened gyms up. Is today Wednesday? It was 3 weeks ago
Really?
yesterday.
Okay. And have you been back yet?
Oh, I was back on the first day.
You
Matter
were.
of,
Ah,
oh yeah, I was back the
I
first
was all
day.
like, I'm gonna wait 2 weeks just to see what happens before I walk into a gym again.
Well, I did some research about it before I went. I called him on the
Mm,
phone. Okay, so what are you guys actually doing?
right.
And the governor of Ohio had some real specific mandates and stuff as to they can't open up unless I'm sure that every gym didn't open up because they
Hmm.
couldn't comply with the list of things that they had to do.
Right.
But and there wasn't that many people there for the first week, and the second week was a little bit more. This
Right.
week it actually started to become more. But of course, I'm in Ohio was not hit nearly as bad as other
Yeah,
places in the country.
of course.
So it's kind of a different thing. But I have to say that I feel a lot more like myself.
Right. Yeah.
You know. Um,
I mean, my first exercise of choice is running, so it hasn't really affected my workout regime. If anything, I feel like I've gotten more disciplined with my working out. Um, I because I run, like I said, I've done a couple marathons and several half
mm,
marathons. Like that's my jam, is running. It's like freedom for me. But I happen to have like all the bands, and I mean, not heavy enough weights to do any major heavy lifting. Before COVID happened, I was regularly attending Orange Theory classes, which was, a lot of lifting, a lot of running, rowing, which I
mm.
can't wait to get back to. But I was able to just kind of create this program that like is going to be really helpful for me when I'm traveling now,
Mm.
because I travel so much, and now I know exactly what to do when I'm in a hotel room. So, or if I ever go to prison, I all know what to do.
Oh, well, they have weights in prison, so you'll be right.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
true. That's true. I'm talking about that, like that jail cell workout. What can I do
right.
in a small space? Because my office is very small. So,
Yeah. A lot of push-ups.
yeah,
But
exactly.
uh, I started doing some push-ups and setups and some other
Oh,
calisthenic
steps. Yeah.
thing. But I kind of gave up on that, honestly. And so it was
Mm,
pretty much 2.5 months of not much working out.
right.
And so when I got back, I was pretty concerned that I was going to be miserable from being
Mm,
just deep tissue soreness.
right.
Uh, but it wasn't that bad. Um, but I'm back to
Good.
my 5 days a week, and
All
all is
right.
right with the world.
All right. All right.
Yeah, I'm a fitness advocate. I
Mhm.
teach at Ohio State, and I'm always talking to my students about, if you're going to play, this is athletic, actually, what it is that we're doing.
Mhm.
Um, uh, you know, Especially as a horn player, you're moving air. There's a physical activity associated with what you're doing, and if you
Mhm.
work out consistently, it's going to promote the ability to play uh, longer and more aggressively without getting tired. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's why I also made a decision that I didn't want to put any kind of substances in my body anymore. Not only because I love to be active, I love to run, I love to get up in the morning and feel fresh, but also like it just and just with age, I'm not getting any younger, and I'm a parent, so I've got a lot on my plate and the traveling. So, um, I made some pretty tremendous lifestyle changes just because I want longevity when it comes to being a vocalist. I want to be like Nancy Wilson. In the end, she still sounded and looked fabulous. And, um, you know, I still want to be on stage when I'm 75 years old. So doing my thing. So the time is now when I'm young and healthy to just, treat my body as a temple.
I was talking to Carmen Bradford. I interviewed her, um, and uh, no, I first played with her with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, but
Hmm.
then we've also played together when I've toured with the Count Basie Orchestra,
Okay.
and she was talking about how if she knows that she's going to be, she has a show coming up or whatever, she she gets into this routine of singing every day and ramping up to a certain number of hours singing
Well,
before she goes on a tour. And then she talked about all of the stuff that she won't drink, it's just really very
mhm.
specific and just uh, and it's and listening to her say that, listening to what you're saying, and I trust that you've enjoyed the video so far. Please subscribe, comment, share, like. And also, you can go over to my Patreon. The link is in the description if you'd like to further support. Thank you. Now, back to the video. And other singers that I know, it seems to be something that's common with folks that sing that are great singers.
Mm-hmm,
uh, they realize that stuff is so important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when I mentioned when I was with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, I was incredibly ill, and I ended up getting strep throat during that run. Which is like just a singer's like worst nightmare. You're feverish, you're sweating, it's so painful. And I think it might have been after the second show, because I did 5 shows with you guys, and it was the second show, and I call my nutritionist. I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, I have 3 more concerts. I'm like a feature. This is not like me in a chorus. And she's just like, you need to go and get an IV. You need fluids in your system or whatever. And so I guess in Columbus, there is this like IV clinic that you can go to. And I ended up going to, I'm doing all this research because like, you don't want just anybody sticking a needle in your arm. It's just like, you want to make sure this place is legit. And this was on a Saturday. So when I walk in and I'm like, I need like the IV that's going to like, I need it. And they're just all like, did you have a late night last night, honey? Because most people that come in here on a Saturday were out Friday night, like drinking heavily. And I'm like, no, I have a concert to do. I'm a singer. Like, give me all the vitamins. I just need them all. So I said, we usually don't have people like you coming in. It's usually, people who are dehydrated from drinking too much alcohol. So, I did that. It was great. And then I had to go on antibiotics. So it was pretty rough.
Well, you sounded better and better every concert.
Oh my gosh.
Which is
I was
pretty
in so
incredible.
much pain.
Oh my goodness. And not for sale or anything, and I'm not, it's not a bootleg for sale or anything, but I record everything. Everything that I play on, I record everything, and I listen back.
Yeah,
and
I know a lot of musicians who do that. Yeah,
but you sounded so good every concert. No. You can pay me later. Okay, so I was looking on your website, and there's a link for, or a tab, or for a page or something for virtual vocal studio.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I know that everybody is like, okay, I can't do a gig. I'm going to start teaching. And I never wanted to jump on that bandwagon, but actually how it happened is that there was a musician who contacted me and said, hey, are you doing voice lessons? And I had never had any intentions of doing voice lessons because it's not my specialty. It's not something I do regularly, because what I do is I gig regularly. On occasion, I will do a master class or a workshop when I'm on tour, because I'll have a promoter ask, hey, will she do a workshop? I love to do it. I love to teach. I love to speak to young people. So I had this musician reach out and say, are you teaching? I said, yeah, I'll do it. He's like, great, I'm going to send a couple of voice students over to you. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, great. What do you want to work on? And then that became like, well, I should just offer this because I'm asked quite a bit. I'll have fans reach out and say, hey, when you're in my city, are you going to do private one-on-ones? Will you do a master class? So I just thought I would just kind of open that up, since I'm here and I have the time to do it. And it's been so rewarding. The students that I'm working with, I'm also working with younger people, which I normally wouldn't do. I guess I'm nervous about, like, am I going to be able to teach your child to sing? What do parents expect of me, as opposed to an adult who comes in and says, I know what I want and I know what I want to work on. So I'm able to then gear my lessons towards exactly what they want. But with the child, you have a parent telling you, can you do this for my child? Can you get them on American Idol or whatever? They have these specific things that maybe they're not necessarily realistic. And I'll have some students who are younger who out the gate say, I want to be able to do this. And I'm like, hold on. It's going to be a slow process. But it's been really nice to see some of my students, the improvements that they've made in the few weeks that they've been with me. And I get really excited and I'm screaming in the lessons. And it's probably not, standard, the typical way that a teacher should be reacting, but I get really excited for them and emotional about it. But it's been fun, and I want to continue to do it even when the gigs come back and make time for it, because I learn from it as well.
Yeah, that's one thing about teaching, at least with my experience of teaching, is uh, it's it's been a primary it's been a primary way that I improve as a musician,
Mm-hmm.
because
Absolutely.
so you have to have clarity when you're describing things.
Mhm.
I mean, you can say you'll hear it maybe one time, and then then after that you need to actually come up with some specifics as to what someone's going to expect in
Right.
different stages of their development
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. And then, I think that the best teachers are also, the greatest musicians. You know, there's that saying, uh, those that can't do teach.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the worst thing ever.
Oh,
That's
it's
that's
terrible.
it's horrible. And if you can't do, I don't want you spreading your poison. You
Mm-hmm.
know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
what's the what, it doesn't make
That
any
is
sense.
right. No, you're absolutely right about that, for
Yeah.
sure. Um, yeah, it takes a special kind of person to be able to teach. I mean, I don't necessarily know how good I am at it. I mean, my students usually come out of a lesson saying, I feel so much better, or that was so much fun. So I guess I'm doing something right. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. All I know is like that this feels good and you should do what feels good. So, um, but yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. And, we don't just like, it's not just all fun and games. We are working on technique, but I'm showing them everything that I've learned. I am just basically giving them the things that I do for myself. I don't have a degree in pedagogy, or I don't even have a music degree. So I'm basically like, here, I'll show you what I do, and I'll try to explain it the best way, in a way that you can absorb the information, and it seems to work. So we'll see.
Yeah, I know you're a terrific teacher. Um, uh, if you're doing any of that stuff that you just said, and providing some support and feedback, and
Hmm.
actually getting excited when the students succeed, that's
Hmm.
that's most of it. That's most of it. And as
Great.
great as as great as you sound, goodness, they're
Mm.
they're they're fortunate.
Well, thank you.
So, how about maybe some moments, some maybe highlight moments? You said some things. I mean, you kind of got us up to speed to where you are right now, and you
Hmm.
talked about Broadway and things. I mean, were there some sort of pivotal moments, maybe things that that you experienced on stage, performing with a certain group, or were there some maybe some? I'm sure that the answer is yes, and you'll probably have a hard time figuring out which ones you want to talk about. But if you
Hmm.
could share some of those, that would be great.
Well, I bring this up a lot. I would say that a pivotal moment for me was doing the Snarky Puppy Family Dinner album. Um, it was unexpected when it happened. I had just had my baby when Mike League reached out to me about doing the live album, and the video, the video where I don't know if you've seen the video of it, or seen any of the Snarky Puppy recordings, but we had an audience that was surrounding us like in a circle, and it was actually the first time that I had sung live since having my baby. So it was
Mm.
I was really vulnerable, and it was scary. And vocally for me, it was very challenging because the muscle hadn't been worked. I was nursing, and there were just so many things going on physically and emotionally for me, that when Mike called me to do it, I didn't know if I was going to be okay to do it. But I said yes because something in my mind said, if you don't do this, it's going to be you're going to regret it. So I said, yes, I'll do it. I'll make it happen. I had my baby. He called me in October. I had my baby in November, and I was in Virginia in March with Snarky Puppy doing this recording, with an infant. um, and it was the first single that they released from the record. And it got a massive amount of praise and play on YouTube, and went viral. And then they won a Grammy, and like all of a sudden my world just kind of exploded when it came to gigging. I went from an independent artist who just makes records, and on occasion I'll do a one-off, to like a thriving touring career very soon after that. So for me, it was a pivotal moment in my career. And I'm so grateful that I did something so scary, because it was a game changer for me. And I also met so many great people from doing that show, in the music business, just other musicians that I became friends with. So yeah, that's usually the story that I tell when I talk about a big moment for me and for my career.
I did this. It was a presentation and a panel discussion at
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State, and it's called "The Power of Yes:
Mm-hmm.
Developing Skills for a Career as a Professional Musician."
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of yes is that no one is born with experience, and eventually you're going to have to do something that you haven't done before.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have to do it often, or something that you're not comfortable with, and
Oh yeah.
uh, nothing good happens if you're not even there to
Mm-hmm.
to take to learn from the experience and to become better at whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
um, and when you're starting off in your career, you have to say yes to pretty much everything because you're trying to get everything going. And
Oh yeah.
then you start to get to, at a certain point, hopefully, if things work out, uh, to where you can start telling people no,
Mm-hmm.
and you can start focusing more on the things that you really want to do.
Absolutely.
Speaking of things that you really want to do, uh, what's the future for you? What are you thinking about? What do you have some um, some projects? Maybe I know you got sort of in the middle. Everybody got cut off in the middle of what they were doing.
Yeah.
I know so many great musicians,
Mm-hmm.
folks that have told me that they were on a record-setting, like a pacing year that was going to set stuff up.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of that myself, and
Same.
um, and everything's stopping like that. But even though everything stopped, what are you thinking about for the future?
Well, I was supposed to debut my first orchestral solo show in April,
Mm,
which I had been working on for a year,
yeah.
with the Rochester Philharmonic, and that was that to me is like one of the biggest career moves that I was about to make, and it will happen, but it probably just because um, symphony. What's it called? Symphony schedules are planned so far in advance that it'll probably be another year and a half or 2 years before I get to debut the show, which is it's heartbreaking, but I know it will happen. Um, so the plan is to do that. Obviously, now, I mean, I have my music has been written for a small band, and now I have charts for a big band, and my next goal is to continue to make more big band charts to be able to farm. I hate to use the word farm my gig out, but yes, to be able to perform with several big bands throughout the world, but also the fact that orchestral charts are being written or have already been written for my original music is so huge to me, that's all I can think about. Like, that to me is the biggest thing I'll ever do, is to sing songs that I wrote with an orchestra. So therefore that is my focus as far as like big picture, is orchestra, big room, gorgeous gowns, like singing music that I wrote at, in my basement with my husband. So yeah, that's definitely big picture. Making another record better than the last record. And I mean, I never like to get caught up on awards or anything, but yes, getting a Grammy nomination is just something that's on my bucket list, is getting a Grammy. It would be great, but I'm just focused on making great music, and yes, continuing to make music that makes me happy and makes others happy.
How about maybe some goals or some things that you have your mind on outside of music per se? Now, I heard you say that you're taking classes.
Yeah, I am. I went back to school last year, and online, and I was in music school after high school. I went to college and finished my freshman year, and then I started working. So I never went back. And I had, in my head, I think I had every intention of going back. Until a couple years ago, I had decided I was going to go back to school, and I started to pursue English. I'm actually finishing up a class right now, the summer course, and in the middle of that course, I decided that I just was like, my heart is just not here. I need to focus on music, and I need to finish my music degree. So I've now switched to taking music classes and working towards that, and just kind of filling in the gaps of things that I want to learn about music. So yes, finishing my higher education in music is a huge goal for me right now.
Good for you. Good for you.
Thank you. Can always be a better musician, always.
I know something about having a lot of stuff going on while simultaneously taking classes.
Mm-hmm.
I finished a degree this past summer.
Oh, wow.
And that was, I'm not sure how that actually worked, because when I sit down and look at how many hours are in the day, it doesn't seem to work the way. But, when you decide you want to do something and it's important, you just make it work.
You do make it work. I've now I'm going into my 4th class in 2 weeks. And even with homeschooling, I've written papers and finals while I've been on the road, like backstage in between songs, I'll go and work on a paper. I actually worked on a paper the week of my dad's funeral. I mean, it has just been like, there's just been so many things that have happened in my life during this time of schooling. And I remember before my dad passed, like, that I talked to him on the phone about a paper I was writing on Frederick Douglass, and then to actually be writing about Frederick Douglass the week of his funeral. And I was like, oh, I remember talking to Dad about this, that I was studying. I took a class on African American literature during like the Harlem Renaissance, and from like slavery to the Harlem Renaissance, and we talked a lot about that. It's just been a really interesting journey, and how I've found the time, like little pockets of time, to study and read and work on things. It's exciting. I like it.
This just occurred to me to ask you this. Did you sing in church at all?
I did when I was younger. We went to church when I was a kid. I lived in Germany for 7 years, and my whole family was part of a church there. And then my dad was transferred to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. And when we got there, we never found a church home. So therefore I stopped singing in church at that time. And I was around 10 years old. So it's hard for me to say like, yeah, I was raised in the church. You know, I learned how to sing in the church, and it was just like, I learned how to sing everywhere with everything. I had so many influences, and gospel music really didn't become a bigger influence in my life until I was much older and, you know, in my adult life. So.
All right. Well, is there anything that you wanted to say, or you know, to talk about a little bit?
Well, I'll be honest. It's been scary to read about some of the independent venues starting to shut down or maybe won't be able to reopen. That, you know, any musicians that are listening or watching this podcast, like, you're not alone. Like, it's scary to think about the arts not having funding and not having support during this time. And, you know, it weighs on my heart to think that we might not have places to play, or that they're going to be bought up by huge companies. And then what is that? You know, the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, brought to you by Whole Foods. You know, it's just like, what is it? What is the state of music going to be, or the state of live music? Where are we going to be in 6 months, or, you know, when there's a vaccine and we can all go out and play again? I'm curious to know your thoughts on where do you think live music stands in 6 to 8 months from now?
Yeah, it's. I don't think that. In okay, so I'm a realist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that things are going to ever be the way that they were
Mm-hmm.
again. Now, there's an immediate pain associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
But moving forward, I think it could actually create some different kinds of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I've been talking to my students and also to colleagues and peers, you know, other artists and thing about is using social media and developing a platform that they can do what it is that they love, that they like to do,
Mm-hmm.
and try to find a way to monetize it so that it can subsidize some of the other things that they want to do. Because it could be a while before we actually get to the place where, okay, so at Ohio State, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
so we had, so for the last 5 weeks of the semester, of spring semester,
Mm-hmm.
it was all online. Now, I had been saying certain things for a lot of years about things that we should be doing,
Mm-hmm.
but the sort of tyranny of the urgent sort of won out, and we never ended up really developing some of that infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 5, 6 weeks before the end of the semester, that tyranny of the urgent became, now you have to develop this infrastructure and you have to do it right now.
Right. Right.
So we did it, and I think that for a lot of faculty members and a lot of folks that don't have a lot of technology savvy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think that we did a really good job, you know, getting to the end of the semester.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, what they're talking about now is there were three options as far as school in the fall. Either 100%, which would be, well, it's like nothing ever happened and everything else. Now, nobody actually thought that that was actually an option.
Yeah.
Uh, Everything completely online, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like we did for the last 5 weeks of spring semester, or a hybrid. and the hybrid meaning that if you have a population that's above a certain number,
Hmm.
then all of those classes will be online.
Hmm.
If you have, for the arts in music in particular,
Hmm.
there's a number of classes where we could do like maybe music theory and
Yeah.
music history. We maybe could do those online.
Yeah.
But as far as performance-based classes like improvisation,
Mm.
obviously rehearsal, for like uh, the jazz ensemble or
Right.
symphonic band or
Hmm.
orchestra or like that, depending on what the numbers are. I think in jazz studies, I think actually we're going to be okay because we don't really have many classes that are above 20 students.
Okay.
Um, I'm just saying that to say that uh, I think that uh, there's some movement, and I think it's going to take a while to get
Hmm.
back. I think that we're going to end up, playing live venues again. I think all of that stuff's going to happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, I just I just think it's going to be different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you
for
were
sure.
you were talking about orchestras.
Hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of folks that play in an orchestra. It's a big group, and
Yeah.
it's usually in a big concert hall that's got a lot of seats.
Yeah.
And I wonder how long it's going to take before we really get all the way back.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, on the other side of this, and I've heard people talk about this, it's like there's so many people are so like there's so much cabin fever, and so people want to get out and see live music so much that it could just be um, maybe it actually ends up getting back there a lot quicker, and maybe
Hmm.
it's more populated than it was before. You know,
Yeah. I mean, I feel
but
like when it, it, whether it be that they just have better treatment for people who get sick or they have a vaccine,
right,
I think it will depend on those things. Like my husband and I both say every 2 weeks something changes. Like I know 2 weeks ago it was, I mean, I live in New Jersey where the numbers are a lot higher. So getting tested is really possible and very easy to do here. You can go to Rite Aid and get tested tomorrow.
hmm,
They have facilities set up everywhere. Now they have a test where you can spit in a tube and send it to a lab and have results in 2 days. So it's a lot easier to do testing here in New Jersey or in the New York area. So I feel like in 2 weeks it'll be even easier where you can like literally you could step
yeah,
outside and someone take your temperature and let you know if you've got COVID. And you know what I mean? I just feel like every day and every week and every few weeks that things change and we surprise ourselves. I'm
yeah.
going into it being like, I probably won't get on a stage any earlier than March, so that if a gig actually happens before then I'll be like, shocker. Okay. Well then, Eureka. I'm doing a gig. But yeah, I expect that it's not going to happen until next year, but I think it will I I think it will get back to something regular at least by next summer.
Now, what's interesting is I still think that there actually are playing and performing opportunities right now.
Yeah.
I know folks that are doing streaming concerts,
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
and I saw you did a streaming concert I saw on Facebook.
Yeah, I've done a few of them now.
Yeah,
And I'm doing one through a festival in August. So some of these
yeah,
festivals and gigs that sorry, I'm moving locations just because my phone's gonna die. um, some of the festivals and things that I had been scheduled to do this summer and this fall, they're now saying, "Well, are you interested in doing them online?" And I say, "Yeah, let's make it happen." And people are setting up um, really great online programs for their audiences and have production teams together to make it a reality
yeah.
because people can't get out and see concerts. So I'm down for whatever it is or however way that they're going to make it happen just so I can perform and so people can see music.
And that's some of the kinds of stuff that uh, this sort of scenario, this you know, uh, this whole pausing everything.
Mm-hmm.
can actually maybe create some different kinds of gigs, and people
Yeah.
have to sort of get their infrastructure and together to be able to do some of those kind of live streaming
Right.
concerts. Also, for instance, the church that I work at, I'm the minister of music at Second Baptist Church in town
Mm-hmm.
here, and we've been streaming services live.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've had a service every Sunday, actually, but there's no congregation. It's just it's a a small number of folks. They're trying to stay within the mandate that the governor set,
Okay.
and but we didn't have cameras, and we didn't have the infrastructure before this thing happened, but we do
Mm-hmm.
now. And so now going forward, even when folks are allowed to come to church again, we'll also have a streaming apparatus, and so then we'll be able to stream services live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a positive way to look at it. Also, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, probably, if it wasn't for this quarantine, because my schedule and probably your schedule
Mm-hmm.
likely would not have been able to accommodate it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think there's been some positive things that have come from
Absolutely.
it. But
Well, we're learning to reinvent ourselves as artists now. We have to do things differently, um,
mm,
which I think is only going to benefit us even when the live gigs start happening again. This is something that I hope continues on. You know, I don't want to stop doing the things that I'm doing. I'm actually really enjoying it, and it's a wake up call.
I was talking to Rodney Whitaker,
Hmm.
and who else almost told me the exact same thing? Joey DiFrancesco,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
about how when this thing happened, when it came down, um, they didn't realize actually how exhausted they were. From constantly being on the
From
road,
touring. Yeah,
and just how nice it was just to be at home. And
it's so true.
and they were like, I wanted a break. I didn't want it this way, but
Exactly. Yeah. But no, I am getting the best sleep of my life. I'm not gonna lie. I think I'm gonna miss this, and also just hanging out with my kid. And no, it is. I feel very well rested, but I'm very ready to get on the stage.
understood. Well, thank you so much for your time,
Of
and
course.
yeah, I I felt like I got to learn more about you, and I think the audience got a nice chance to learn more about you, and
Hmm.
um, that's what I wanted.
Well, great. Thank you for having me. It was
Well,
great.
God bless you.
Same to you.
All right now.
All right. Bye bye. Take care.